Hey there, my name's Porsha Lauri. Welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. And guess what?
What?
Today I am revisiting something I have talked about many times on my channel, but I'm back to talk to you once again about a little show called Degrassi.
Yeah!
So I didn't really think I was going to dip my toe back into the waters of Degrassi really on my channel anymore. However, I thought it would be really fun to consecutively watch the seasons, have a clear understanding of what the different arcs were for each character, a clear overview over what the series represented and what these characters went through. So that's what we're going to begin today. I don't know how often I will be doing installments, but I will get through at least the first 7 seasons of the show, and then we can kind of reconvene from there. But before we get into it, as always, if you enjoy listening to my opinions about TV shows, movies, what have you, do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. If you can't get enough of my opinion here on YouTube, you can also check out the podcast. It's called the Cinema Sit Down Podcast. We just sit around and talk about movies, and it's a whole lot of fun. It'll all be linked in this description box below. And with that, let's just get into it. Season 1 covers the opening, or rather reopening, of Degrassi Middle School in the age of technology or media immersion. This is a big upgrade for this version of an ongoing 80s high school drama, made new for the kids of the new millennium and littered with enough original cast members to evoke the right amount of nostalgia for returning viewers. While I think Degrassi manages to not have any one main cast member, but rather a true ensemble, a few characters stick out as the focal point within each season, and given that this is season 1, we are limited with storylines, something that is corrected with more and more characters constantly added from season to season. In this one, we get Emma and Ashley as our story drivers, helping introduce us to the lower and upperclassmen of Degrassi. And for the parental set, we have Emma's mom, Christine, aka Spike, who played a pregnant teen in the original show, as well as Mr. Simpson, aka Snake, a teacher and former student of Degrassi, an alumni of the original cast. Look, the first season is pretty rough. Everyone is a bit awkward, and some of them need time to figure out their characters' personalities. Some of them pull it off immediately, while others need some time to cook. And some are just straight up annoying. But let's get into it. I thought about breaking down the season by big pivotal moments in the season, but that seemed to be almost every other episode, so it was getting kind of hard to make a cohesive timeline of events. So if you guys have any suggestions for how I might continue the breakdowns from season to season, I'm totally open to changing this format. But for this video, we'll go ahead and go from character to character, and then I think I have a handful of things that I really loved, a handful of things I didn't like so much, and what we can expect with season 2. As I mentioned during my intro of season 1, there are no real main cast members of Degrassi. I really feel as though the show acts as an ensemble piece. But with season 1 and needing, a jumping off point to kind of bring together this crew of kids, we need someone who is connected to the original show. If you were unaware, if you started watching Degrassi during The Next Generation, as I did, you might not be aware that this show is actually a remake or a continuation, if you will, of an 80s TV show. Now, I'm not going to get into the entire history of Degrassi, frankly, because I don't know that much about the original show. I know it existed. I know some characters from the original show will end up bleeding into The Next Generation. But beyond that, I'm really not knowledgeable about the original show. I do know a handful of YouTubers who have done some really excellent breakdowns and videos if you're interested in getting to know the 80s version. But since we have a jumping off point for this continuation show, it makes sense that one character might be singled out in order to kind of bring us to present. And Emma is the character that kind of does that. So Emma is the daughter of Christine, and on the original Degrassi High School, or Degrassi High, it was a very controversial storyline at the time. Obviously, this is the 80s. Did you know Degrassi was also one of the first like TV shows to drop an F-bomb on like national television?
You were fucking Tessa Campanelli?
No.
Pretty crazy. I can't even drop an F-bomb now on YouTube. Christine was pregnant on the original running of the show, and you later on see her give birth, see her go through how hard it is to be. She was basically MTV's Teen Mom, but like way ahead of its time. So because she had a kid on the show, and the kid that she would have had in that timeline would be entering junior high around this time, we have the character Emma. And so Emma is Christine's daughter, and Emma is kind of our titular character for a good majority of the first few seasons of the show. Again, I do think Degrassi does its best work when it works as an ensemble, but I don't think it can really be overlooked that Emma is somewhat of a poignant character for the first few seasons of the show until she eventually kind of outgrows it. Especially in the latter seasons that she's in, I think I want to say Emma's on the show all the way up until like season 9 or 10. But even, the footage of her in college is not exactly gripping television, and they've definitely by that point moved on to bigger storylines with the younger cast. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself, so let's remember we're only talking about season 1. So Emma's character does help introduce us to her world, so the underclassmen, and that will consist of her best friend Manny, and then their boyfriends, not boyfriends, but boys who are friends, JT and Toby, who are besties, and Shawn. And Shawn is someone that they all mutually meet, but he becomes part of the gang. Something I did not realize when I watched this show as a child is how divisive this character truly is. Now, if I'm being 100% honest, as a child, I really liked Emma. I thought she was incredibly ambitious. I thought she was very strong. She was not very self-aware, but very, confident in her thoughts and opinions. That is the nicest way of saying that Emma was out here being a Karen before Karens were Karening. Emma walked so Karens could run. And I really didn't pick up on that until I started rewatching this. Granted, I'm going to give Emma a little bit of grace because this character is also 12 years old. And I don't know if you remember what you were like at 12, but you were probably insufferable. So the fact that I still can find pieces of her personality that are digestible is a win, okay? But man, Emma does come across very know-it-all. I think she is a kid that if I personally went to school with her, I would avoid her. Emma is good-natured, and she cares a lot about the planet and her friends and her family. But the way that she forces her opinion onto others can be so off-putting. And it really rears its ugly head in some of the episodes that are specifically geared about Emma. Parents' Day comes to mind. In this episode, it's mostly focused on Toby. However, there is a B storyline about NAK kids and their promotions within schools. And Emma finds this to be inappropriate and, kind of forced advertising. However, this program also provides the school with all of their computer gear. They've put in a lot of money into the school. And so there's this debate on, the ethics of the situation. And to be fair, Emma does have a point. However, she's not willing to be open-minded enough to figure out the other reasons why this might be happening, or how Shawn brings up the fact that he could never afford to have a computer in his home without the help of this program. And she's just not really willing to concede to seeing anyone else's thoughts or opinions. It doesn't necessarily mean that her opinions are wrong, but she's not really willing to find a comfortable medium. It's kind of her way or the highway. I think this is also showcased a lot in Wannabe. Wannabe showcases that Paige is starting a spirit squad for Degrassi, aka a cheerleading squad. Manny is super pumped and excited about this and wants to audition. However, Emma thinks the entire thing is sexist because she's Emma. You know that old bag. And when she finds out that Manny secretly does audition behind her back after saying she wouldn't, she gets all up in her feelings and she writes a pretty mean and aggressive column about it in the Grapevine, to which Paige then takes a bunch of copies of and rips her article out of. And so it's this whole big thing. Of course, there are two sides to the story. There's an aspect that shouldn't have been done with Paige ripping out her opinion piece, but there's also a lot to be said about Emma's stance and why she's so firm on it and why she feels so to take something away from other people because it's not the type of feminism that she is interested in representing. And that's pretty diabolical in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that by the end of the episode she really has any differently. She just realizes how much she's hurt Manny's feelings, and I think that's ultimately how we move on from this situation. But this kind of scenario, especially between Emma and Manny, is going to come up over and over and over again. So, don't worry, sit tight. Now, to coincide with all the Emma hate, I would also like to say that there are some factors of her that I love. I think she has some really fantastic qualities that are really wonderful to be displayed for young women, especially to be so passionate about your thoughts and opinions that you do something about it. You're not a passive player, you're active, you're part of the change. Along with those positivities, I also still really adore the relationship between Shawn and Emma, and I more am focused on the later part of their relationship when I think about them, and I forgot how just absolutely pure and sweet and simple it just gave me so many, it made all those butterflies come back again. I think that they're very, very sweet, and it's a very age-appropriate love storyline for these characters, and I adored it. I loved rewatching the episode where they go on the disaster date, from her having diarrhea of the mouth to forcing Shawn to jump into a dumpster to look for her wallet that was in her pocket the whole time. I think it's all just really sweet, really cute. And I kind of forgot about the second half of the season arc where, Shawn starts to have a lot of insecurities about how he's doing in school and maintaining, his GPA because he is on probation, and, he's having a lot of emotional, he's having a hard time dealing with all of these heavy emotions and missing his parents and their complicated relationship, that he ends up taking out his aggressions on Jimmy, and they have a fight where Emma also gets involved. And I had kind of forgotten about the storyline, or at least the context and the timeline that it happened in. So it made more sense why we went into season 2 with all of these really confusing emotions for both Emma and for Shawn, for him not being able to properly communicate to her what was really going on, and for her not having a clear understanding of what kind of guy he is, and her being fearful of him. So it actually added more context for season 2, which I appreciated. Going back and rewatching this really made that more clear. And it also made Jagged Little Pill, which is the final episode of the season, make a lot more sense. But I absolutely adore Shawn and Emma, and I am really excited to watch their little relationship grow as we move through the seasons. So I'm also going to be giving a kind of 1 out of 10 rating for each character for every season. I think this is something I am gonna stick to because I do enjoy when other people do that, and eventually maybe I'll put it on a tier list or something, and we can kind of keep track from season to season. But for Emma, for season 1, I am going to give her a 5 out of 10. Now, I feel like that's pretty low, but again, this is season 1. I think it's not the worst season, but just, you know, it's an introductionary season for everyone, for the show, for the audience, for all these characters. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time to really get into the groove, and so I don't want to overshoot just yet. So I'm going to keep it medium at a 5 for now. I think since we started off with Emma, it only makes sense to move on to our other sort of main character for the season, Ashley. And boy, if we thought Emma was a divisive character, Ashley is controlling, petty, and a classic type A overachiever. She annoys the fuck out of me. I didn't have a cleaner way to say that. I'm sorry. This character, from the jump, has always just sort of rubbed me the wrong way. This character drives me up a wall. And I just, you know, a lot of people don't enjoy Emma, but I would hard argue that Emma is a million times easier to deal with. Now, Ashley introduces us to our upperclassmen, which I do have to say, I think is a more well-rounded crew of kids to jump off with, but the younger crowd gets better over time. So first we have Ashley, obviously, and her boyfriend, Jimmy, played by, you know who it's played by. We have Jimmy's best friend, Spinner, and Spinner is not linked with anyone just yet. Eventually he will find himself, you know, in a very committed relationship for the majority of the TV show, at least with pivotal people at pivotal moments. But for now, we have single Spinner on our hands. We also have Ashley's best friend, Terry. And then I don't know exactly how to connect them, but I'll say they're acquaintances. They claim to be friends, but I would argue frenemies at best. But we have Paige, who has known Ashley since apparently they were in diapers or something like that. And we have Paige's sidekick, Hazel. I would call her a friend, but mostly the way Paige maneuvers in the first couple seasons, I don't think the girl really has friends. She just has agents of chaos. Now, given that Ashley is the older of the two sort of leads of season 1, she does get to dabble a little bit more in more sensitive topics, more salacious episodes. For example, we see in the mating game, Mrs. Kwan in their English class assigns everyone to do scenes from Romeo and Juliet, or they all have to do a scene, something like that. And Jimmy gets picked to play Romeo, while Paige is picked to play Juliet, and she gives him like a big kiss. And this entire scenario leads to Spinner telling Jimmy that they've been together long enough that they should consider doing it. They're in 8th grade. And so there's the kind of will they, won't they, leading up to the end of the episode where they both decide that they are super not ready and they make balloon animals out of condoms. She also finds out a huge secret that's been lingering in her family that, you know, she doesn't find out about until now, but that her parents had gotten divorced, and she had always assumed it had to do with them falling out of love or something like that. But what she truly comes to find out is that her father is gay, and I felt like this was probably a pretty groundbreaking storyline. I don't remember seeing a whole lot of shows dealing with something quite like this at the time, so I feel like Degrassi was already kind of showcasing like they weren't afraid to deal with topics that other shows weren't interested in talking about openly. And I also think it's important to remember that at the time that Degrassi was airing, which I believe season 1 came out in 2002, this was still airing at a time where there was appointment TV, if you will, you know, where families would still get together and all watch a TV show geared towards families so that everyone could enjoy what was on. And so that families would have an opportunity to talk with their kids about some of these tougher topics, with the outlet being a TV show that they're interested in as the jumping off point. So I think that storylines like this, like with Ashley dealing with her parents' divorce and also her father's sexual orientation, or as we'll get into later, because I think I'm going to talk about it in a whole separate section, but Jagged Little Pill, which does dabble in teen DRUGS usage, and I think that was a really bold move to do in your pilot season of the show. And as I've mentioned, to just get a little bit more into it, I think that Ashley also displays that she's somewhat of a shit friend. There's the coming of age episode, which is Jimmy spending too much time at Ashley's house and she's annoyed by it. So instead of talking to him about it, she starts to plan to break up with him, but then realizes it's his birthday, so like decides not to. But he finds out anyway, and he's like, why didn't you just talk to me about it? And lo and behold, we find out that the reason Jimmy's spending so much time at Ashley's house is because he's alone all the time and he's lonely. The cabaret episode where she refuses to speed up the tempo of her very drab and boring song. So then Terry and Paige end up taking her song, which I still don't find that to be okay. But they take it and run with it with their own remix. She wrote the damn song, so like also let the girl sing the song however she wants to sing the damn song. But also, if you're gonna collaborate with people, like collaborate with people, not just like run the show and tell them what to do and like whoosh. Like, I don't know. I guess that not the greatest example, but Ashley is pretty cunning in that episode about Paige specifically. So I will maintain that I think Jagged Little Pill is actually a very good episode, and I think that Ashley is good in it. As a kid trying to portray another kid being under the influence, I think she did a very good job. And I do think she does a great job of pulling all of this information, pulling all of this drama and trauma from season 1, and how it's going to be showcased in season 2 is really good acting skills. So regardless of my thoughts or opinions on Ashley, I will give her her flowers where due. With that being said, I'm going to rate Ashley a 6 out of 10. So like I said, you know, it's a shorter season, you know, it's the first season of a show, and there's always like not as many episodes as we will get further along. So a lot of the rest of the character bios are going to be a little bit smaller, but later entries into this revisiting Degrassi series are probably going to be a lot longer and have a lot more context to them. So now we move on to Manny, my personal favorite Degrassi character of all time. During this rewatch, we will be re-exploring this, so I mean, thoughts and opinions could change, but from what I remember, even as a kid, she's always been a personal favorite of mine. Now, in season 1, I don't think Manny gets very much time to shine. I think all we really establish about this character is that she's Emma's best friend. They've been best friends forever. They're completely connected at the hip, and she seems to be a very spunky and excitable girl. She also mentions on numerous occasions that she has extremely strict parents, and so there's a lot of things that she is not allowed to do. These themes will be explored further down the line. I do really enjoy how in the wannabe episode where she wants to join the cheerleading squad, or spirit squad as they refer to it. I really like seeing the dichotomy of Manny wanting to be part of the popular crowd, wanting to be liked, especially by Paige, but also the other side of it of knowing her own morals and her own loyalties. And this is something that's going to continue with her character throughout many, many seasons of the show. But I think she establishes that she's not to be messed with. She's not a pushover. Even though she is a very nice girl, she's not an idiot. So while Manny doesn't have a whole lot to do in this season, and by not having a whole lot to do, I mean she really doesn't do really anything in the season, but she's here and she exists and I like her a lot and she's my favorite character. So here's my bias showing. I'm giving Manny a 7 out of 10. Next we move on to Shawn, whom I think I've talked about quite a bit in Emma's section of the video, but just to reestablish, you know, Shawn is our resident bad boy, okay? He's our resident baddie of season 1, and this will kind of continue. This is kind of part of his personality, you know, boy from the wrong side of the tracks. Got into some trouble. He's in town, but he's on probation. And actually, he did deafen a kid in one of his ears, so I mean, he isn't one to be messed with. But Shawn really is one of those guys that's like tough exterior, big soft teddy bear on the inside. There's some genuine moments, conversations that he has with Emma that are just really sweet. And under pressure, we do see trying to get good grades, being worried about being on his probation, his family drama, and the past trauma from what he did to the kid, that the reason he was in juvie for the time that he was. And you see all this culminate into a big violent outburst. After Emma gets injured, you know, in the crosshairs of this violent outburst, he definitely has a lot of, he feels very apologetic. He feels very ashamed and embarrassed by not being able to just talk about it with her. But even though that happens, this is still going to be an ongoing thing we'll see him deal with throughout the entirety of the show. So Shawn, I am also giving a 7 out of 10. Now the next 3 characters I have decided to just roll into one category. But let's talk about Toby, JT, and Liberty. So these characters exist. I'm not gonna lie, none of these are particular favorites of mine in this first season. As time goes on, I would say that they do begin to grow on me, and I have a different opinion, you know, further down the line about how I feel about these characters. But for the most part in season 1, I found these characters to just be kind of filler, the bones of what would be JT, but I did find him wildly annoying and almost insufferably, there's just something about him that kind of made me want to punch him right in the nose. So that was rough. Toby is just sort of here, and I find him to be kind of whiny and annoying, but not bringing much to the table. And Liberty is your classic, overachiever. Oh, she's a different type of annoying. That's what it is. Ashley is like whiny, emotional, teenager, exhausting, annoying. Whereas Liberty is like too smart for your own good and cares too much. Some of them do get little bits of storylines. Because Toby is Ashley's half-brother, their parents got married and they're newly living together. He gets his own storylines a little bit. There's Parents' Day, where his divorced parents are both there together, but they argue the whole time, and they just don't care. There is a school dance that JT and Toby decide to skip in order to stay home and surf, and so there's that. There's some point where they're trying to win some kind of chip sweepstakes, and they rope in Spinner and Liberty. Are you seeing my eyes? There's no light behind my eyes anymore. I just didn't really find any of their storylines to be that interesting to me. And again, this could just be because time has gone on, but actually I think it's just because they're weaker players within the grand scheme of the show as of right now. But I do feel that all of these characters will improve from season to season, and I don't think I would even put them all into the same category when I go to wrap up season 2. Overall, I'm going to give all 3 of them a 5 out of 10. So the next set we are going to talk about is Terry, Paige, and Hazel. So as mentioned before, Terry is Ashley's best friend, so we see her showcase quite a bit throughout the show. It is very clear from the jump. She does not think very highly of herself and is quite self-conscious, kind of your standard, early 2000s heavy girl cliche. Unfortunately, I don't think this character gets a whole lot of room to do anything outside of that, even though her character has other traumas like the passing of her mom at an early age. We don't really delve into any of that, and we really focus on her self-image issues for the majority of time that this character will be on the show. With that being said, I do really adore Terry. I think she's really funny. She has these moments where she can be really petty, which makes me understand why she's such a why her and Ashley are very good friends. She has these really sad moments where she wants to be accepted by the popular crowd and is not always quite getting there, but she also has these moments of, outsmarting her enemies, if you will. Paige, oh my God, what an icon. When I think of Degrassi, the first person I think of is Paige. A new year will never go by without me saying,
New year, new look, new Paige.
I adore Paige with every fiber of my being, and I will shout this from the rooftops. I will die on this hill. Paige is just so fun. She's just a fun character. She's like, you know, I feel like every good high school TV show needs a popular mean girl. And while Paige, I don't think is completely a mean girl all the time. You know, if you watch the show, then if you know, you know. But I do, like, she's just hats off. Just, like, give her flowers. Paige is awesome. She starts the show with a bang, you know, new year, new look, new Paige. She is extra diabolical in this season specifically. Like, there are some moments where I was like, ooh, just pure mean. The episode Eye of the Beholder, where Paige wants Spinner's attention, but Spinner's giving all of his attention to Terry, and so she gets Terry drunk before the school dance, thus ruining her chances with Spinner. And that basically actually does ruin Terry's chances with Spinner for the rest of the show. And Paige never apologizes for it. Like, she comes clean and she's like, I think she tells Ashley, I told her to stop. But she never says, like, Terry, I shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry. So, like, just diabolical stuff. And Hazel, much like Toby, is here, okay? Hazel doesn't have much to do. In later seasons, she will continue to not have much to do, unfortunately. But I do like Hazel. She's also mean like Paige, and sometimes it's just fun to have some mean girls with quitty one-liners. I do like the filler upperclassmen characters a lot, and we're going to see these characters develop over time a little bit here and there, and I'm very, very excited to watch them evolve on the show. So overall, I'm giving them a 6 out of 10. Next, let's talk about Jimmy and Spinner. So I thought it was very fitting to just go ahead and roll these two into their own category. I don't think either of these characters have a whole lot to do this season. I definitely think that they are going to expand at and get bigger parts, bigger storylines as we move forward. Jimmy's whole character is playing basketball. That's kind of it. We do understand that his parents are very rich. They're both successful lawyers. However, they are never home as a result. And so they kind of show the love for their son through purchases. And so anything new, cool, trendy, he's got it. But the one thing he doesn't have is the attention and love from his parents. Meanwhile, Spinner, we don't know a whole lot about his family, but what we understand is that he's being raised by a single mom. He's got a sister named Kendra. I don't think we know that yet, though. Nope, that's next season. Sorry about that. Spoiler. And he is a class clown. And there are 2 girls that are vying for his attention the entire season. Meanwhile, he is completely oblivious to this. Jimmy is, like I said, paired up with Ashley, and they've been together their whole lives. I guess they're supposed to be kind of our resident Corey and Topanga, if you will. And so a lot of the episodes with Jimmy featured in it, they do have a tendency to revolve around their relationship. So most of what we know about Jimmy is kind of on the surface. Moving forward, we'll get to know him more. Spinner, on the other hand, most of his episodes, like he can carry a B storyline. From boycotting the cafeteria because he found a bug in the food, to trying to get sick in order to avoid taking a test and then doing fine on the test but getting sick anyway. That's kind of the only facets we see Spinner in. And again, like I said, Paige and Terry are both interested in Spinner, and he's kind of oblivious to both. He does seem to have an attraction for Terry and keeps seeming to blow off Paige. But this must change for him at some point. Maybe it's the summer of season 1 going to season 2. But he really does seem to care a lot about Terry, goes out of his way to talk to Terry or to have things to talk to Terry about. And then because of what happens at that school dance, this never develops into really anything. And that is so disappointing, because I would have loved to have seen Terry and Spinner get together. That would have been awesome. Spoiler alert, they're never going to. Implied that Jimmy and Spinner are best friends and have been forever. I would say a lot of times they're not really getting along with each other, and this amps up over time. And so it's nice. It was kind of funny for me to see that, oh, they were always on each other's shit like from the beginning of the show. So that's been a consistent thing. Now, overall, I think Jimmy needs time to really, so his character could have a personality. And I think Spinner kind of nails being like a class clown. Like, much like Paige, I think he just kind of walked on set and like, it felt like he knew who he was. So if I had to split the difference, so I think I'm gonna give them a 5 overall, but I would give Spinner a 6 and Jimmy a 5, but we'll just split it and say a 5 overall. So these are just a few notes I picked up in season 1 that I didn't really know. Things that I didn't know then were gonna kind of snowball into bigger things later. But we do see from the jump that Degrassi was already incorporating music, and we love to see it. Ashley's song that gets manipulated by Snake, Terry, and Paige, and this will just kind of keep going. So I'm excited for other seasons where we'll have more music to talk about, but I do think that they do a good job of mixing the characters together in scenarios so that all the storylines can be somewhat interwoven. We do showcase some relationships that we're going to expand upon more later on in time. So that's kind of like Snake and Spike. They are original alumni from Degrassi, junior high and high school from the original show, and we're really gonna expand on their characters in the following season. We meet also Joey Jeremiah, who will play a much bigger role in the show moving forward, but we see him from time to time in season 1 as well. We'll really get some more intertwined storylines that have to do with the original show within season 2 onwards, which I'm actually very excited about. We also established that Jimmy and Shawn have beef. So it's my understanding that Jimmy was around for whatever originally happened to Shawn, whatever happened with like deafening the kid, because like we don't know all of the information of that event just yet. We'll learn more in a later season. And he was originally a grade higher, and he got held back a year due to all of this stuff happening. And Jimmy apparently remembers this, and this becomes a point of contention for Shawn, who's obviously trying to outrun his past, if you will. Ends up having a fight with Jimmy where nothing really happens, but what sends them over the tipping point is in Jagged Little Pill, where Shawn and Ashley end up kissing. And because Jimmy sees this, it just creates a shitstorm for the two of them, and they're gonna keep having to, we're gonna have to hash this out on the remix. And actually, I don't think Jimmy and Shawn ever get along, but don't quote me on that. We'll have to wait till we get there. But we can see the bubblings of kind of that enemy relationship at the tail end of season 1. So every season, I believe there will be a few episodes that will need their own time to shine, if you will. Because this video is already, I can tell, ridiculously long, I will not spend a whole lot of time. However, there were a few from season 1 that I thought were noteworthy enough that we should talk about them. So the first episode I want to talk about, of course, is Stranger Danger. It's not called Stranger Danger on the net. That's what I called it. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what the first episode's called. I should have written that down. Wouldn't it be funny if it actually is Stranger Danger on the net? Anyway, the pilot episode features Emma, who has been talking to this kid online. You already know where this story is going because this is the early 2000s, and this was pre-catfish era internet, and we were just telling kids everywhere to be safe. Did they learn? No, but we tried to warn them. Anyway, Emma's talking to what she thinks is a kid on the net and plans to meet up with him in person, only to find out, shock and awe, he's a PDF file. And so her friends and Snake and Spike have to go and save her. While I do think that this episode is so heavy-handed, I'm also watching this in 2025. That is not a full, fair whole look at this situation. I think the acting was a little melodramatic, but relatively okay. Again, this is a newcomer. This is the pilot episode for a brand new show, and to do something this heavy is pretty impressive. So I am going to give the overall performance from everyone in that episode a 6 out of 10. And what a great, not what a great way, but like what a great way to kick off a show. It did a very good job of pulling me in from the jump. It's a rare occasion that I will think about a pilot past just seeing the pilot. I can't think of any other TV show, and all of my favorites like Sex and the City, Boy Meets World, Dawson's Creek. I don't remember any of those pilot episodes. Not a single. Okay, well, Dawson's Creek I do, but that's beside the point. The point is that I don't ever remark about them again. It's just a jumping off point. However, this one is rent-free in here, baby. Coming of age. In this episode, Emma gets her period for the first time. And while I'm sure this scenario has been done a ton of times on TV, I think that the way Degrassi handles it is purely just very realistic. Even the look of it feels realistic. A lot of times I feel like this can be humorized so much to the point that it kind of loses its original meaning, and I felt like this really encompassed the embarrassment but also the joy of becoming a woman. So 10 out of 10. No notes. And finally, Jagged Little Pill, as I've been mentioning. So let me give you a quick synopsis of the episode. Ashley is tired of being called a stick in the mud and a goody two-shoes and wants to live on the wild side for once in her life. So when her parents, well, her mom and Jeff go out of town and she is left in charge with Toby, she decides to throw a little bit of a party. But what she wasn't expecting is that JT, Toby's friend, would be bringing DRUGS into the house, and that changes everything. The thing I love about Jagged Little Pill is that it puts into motion where we're gonna go with these characters for season 2. Basically, this friend group that we have come to know is going to be breaking off into smaller chunks, smaller pieces, and allowing us to get to know more new characters as the show would go on. But, you know, if you're watching this for the first time, you don't know where things are going to go from here. And in a lot of shows, they might do an episode like this and then just like never address it again. But the Degrassi never, like, Degrassi is an elephant, you know, like never forgets. So they bring all the drama of this into the following season, and I think that's what helps really drive the show forward, to be honest. Just chef's kiss. I really enjoyed it. I know I said earlier, I find Ashley to be incredibly annoying, but in this episode, I understood where she was coming from. I could understand why her character would make the decision that she does, given the pressure that she feels that she's under, and I just remember what it was like to be 13, 14 and confused.
What I should have done is broken up with you on your birthday, like I was going to. Ash, would you just stop being such a hag already? Paige, you are a hag. On two fronts. Your looks and your personality.
This episode will change the social hierarchy moving forward, and that's pretty exciting. Speaking of which, let's talk about season 2. So a few sneak peeks that I'm really excited about for season 2. Make sure to tell me what you are excited about in Degrassi season 2 in the comments below. I am super pumped to see Craig. Craig is one of my favorite characters. I think I've mentioned that in every Degrassi video I've done, and I've done a few. I will have a created playlist linked in the description. I'm very, very looking forward to Ellie and Marco. Oh, so many familiar faces are coming onto this next season. And if you thought Jagged Little Pill was going to be the only time they go there, we got Shout this season. That's all I've got for today. That's Degrassi season 1. If you would like something a little bit different when we get to season 2, let's chat about it. I love to have conversations with you guys, and I love talking about Degrassi. So tell me your favorite moments from season 1, your favorite episodes, your favorite characters. Tell me all the things or what you didn't like, everything down below in the description box. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do me a solid and drop a like on it. Then be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it so you can know every time I upload. There's the podcast that'll be linked in the description along with all of my social medias. But I hope you guys had fun talking about Degrassi with me. I can't wait until we're back here to talk about season 2, and I'll catch you guys on the flip. Bye.